Thank you, Mr. Reverend, for spending some time with me.
Thank
Um,
you for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to another fellow historian. Uh,
Absolutely.
My name is Talia. This is a snippet of Talia Talks. I'm really excited to talk about your project. So I'm just going to go right into questions and I'm going to ask, what is your name and title?
My name is Doug Ruffin. I am currently the content curator of the Buffalo History Channel. It's been on YouTube now for it's in its third year on YouTube.
I am elated. I'm going to say that a million times. I find your content to be very inspiring.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned what is the name of your project, but can you say why you named it that and kind of why you started it?
Well, the Buffalo History Channel, it actually started right incidentally at the start of the pandemic. Um, it was I was in Buffalo in March of 2020. And I actually incidentally was doing a screening of my third full-length documentary, 67, The Buffalo Uprising, which was about the 1967 Buffalo race riot that took place in the Cold Springs section of Buffalo, New York on Jefferson Avenue. Jefferson
Which
and
I absolutely had no awareness of, sir, which is
yeah,
why your work is so important. Thank you.
yes. And as I was getting ready to drive home, because I had recently relocated to the state of Maryland, and I was gathering a lot of my work video production work that I've done in Buffalo for the past 20 plus years. And I had just moved out here and I needed and I realized that while I was networking with people, I was telling them about some of the documentary work that I've done, particularly talking to people that were associated with the Smithsonian and the museums in Buffalo, in the DMV here. And I realized I didn't really have any kind of links or any type of place to direct them to a lot of my work. So what I intended to do, especially with the pandemic coming and the lockdown, and pretty much people were going to be not going anywhere, and everybody was going to be mostly at home if you weren't at work. Um, I was going to bring all my work back to Maryland, and just when I was at home for however long I was going to be at home, I was going to just upload some stuff, start a new YouTube channel, and just upload some of my work to YouTube. I already had a separate YouTube channel which bared my name, but I decided to do something different and have another channel just simply to put my work at, my documentary work at. And I hadn't planned to make it into any kind of a a major platform or anything like that. It was just some place to store a lot of my work and give people links and direct people that I would make contact with. And so I was uploading all my work, and I noticed that it was starting to get a lot of views on YouTube. And I also called it the Buffalo History Channel. And initially there was no real thought process that went into it. It really was just a thought that popped into my head, and I just simply called it that, not really thinking about anything else. And while I had a lot of my documentary work up there on the Build organization, on Model Cities, on St. John Baptist Church, I also had made plans the previous year to interview a gentleman by the name of Kevin Blackford, who was the head and founder of the Buffalo chapter of the Black Panther Party. And we had made contact because he was in living in New York City, but he was planning to come up into Buffalo in May of 2020. And we were going to do a nice sit down interview, and he was going to talk all about the Buffalo chapter of the Black Panthers. That wound up never happening because of the pandemic. So I had to learn more about these platforms and these online platforms. And I did a phone interview with him online. And then when I edited that and put that on YouTube, that whole thing just blew up. And then after the success of that interview, that's when it kind of popped into my head, hey, there might be an opportunity to take this platform and do just a little bit more with it. I mean, because there were a lot of other stories that I had always wanted to tell. And even though I had left Buffalo, I could still contact people, and it would be a lot easier to converse with them by way of the internet and kind of get some of these stories told. So that's pretty much how it the Buffalo History Channel kind of spawned off with its series of content.
Literally, the amount of stories probably matches my level of enthusiasm. I just love the idea, and I know I told you before prior to this interview, like, I actually learned a whole bunch from your content
Which
about
content have you watched? Because I
I
always
watched
ask
one
people
of 'em
that.
I watched one of them about, like, how they started there was, like, a consortium of media business people, and then after that, like, there was, like, this meeting and then different like, this specific plan to diversify media in Western New York. There was, like,
Right.
a conference someone held, and I remember cleaning and just listening to that and being like, "Wow,
Mhm.
this is incredible." So, again, I'm so grateful, and I know that others who are learning about your platform today should navigate there. Can you tell them, are you on social media too? Because I just wanted to at you. So you're on YouTube, correct?
Yes, I'm at YouTube on YouTube, Buffalo History Channel.
Okay.
Yep,
Well, I'm super excited to have you here with us in the time that we do have together. And I know I stated that I would really appreciate a longer, maybe in person, full length interview. But I
certainly.
think for me, like part of it, I want to know too is like, is there, because you mentioned story. So is there someone's story that you absolutely feel like you have to capture? And you're like, this is the one person I need to collaborate with of the thousand stories that you are going to tell coming soon?
Oh my goodness. That one is a hard one. There are a lot of stories that I have in the works right now. There was a gentleman by the
Wait,
name.
those don't count. I'm talking about someone that you've not even contacted that you're like, "Oh my goodness, this
Oh,
is
that I
like
haven't
yeah,
contacted.
or this is like my dream interview." Because I have dream interviews and they
Yeah.
shift. They change every day. This is definitely high on the list though, because I my enthusiasm for how much deliberate
Mhm.
effort that you've put in to educate, I think again is very inspiring. Is there anybody that you're like, one I have to have on the Buffalo History Channel because they're definitely Buffalo history and or
Mhm.
maybe outside of Buffalo that you're like, "I would love to tell this person's story too."
Who I'd like to have on the Buffalo History Channel, the Rick James's Stone City Band. I mean, we have been in contact. We just got to get the schedules lined up. I'd also like to have Beverly Johnson. He's one of the among the first supermodels to come out of Buffalo. So hopefully, if I can make there's one person I know that's he's family with. I just have to get around to reaching out to him to see if he can hook that up for a brother. But
That's so cool.
those would be like those would be more very higher level interviews with people, to connect with people who have kind of extended themselves outside of the Buffalo area and going on to success in other places. Those would be some next level interviews for the that would be great for the Buffalo History Channel.
Yeah, and I feel like those will happen, and I totally wanna be there to support whether it's digitally or not, because 'cause I'm learning a
Mhm.
lot too, and, like, I didn't even know you can set, like, a premiere on YouTube. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm fretting." Like, wait until I have my YouTube premiere over whatever I make.
Yeah, I'm still learning it myself, and it's actually been a good help for the platform. So I'm even learning, the whole ways and means of content creation. I've been TV professional, videographer, video editor, reporter, video journalist, now filmmaker. Now I'm transition to content creator. That's You're
Yeah, you're
always
a
learning
digital
something.
creator.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, so I definitely want and I know I said this, I want a longer interview so you could tell me more about, like, your
Mhm.
professional maturation and, like, how you've gotten to this space because I feel like a lot of why you can do this is, 1, you have the lived experience, the knowledge, and then the network. Because
Yeah.
you could have the desire to do this, but if you don't have people who are motivated to speak with you, I think it would be really
Right.
difficult. So
Yes, that's essential.
with the time that we have left, I wanna pose 2 questions to you, okay?
Sure. Mhm.
And then these are precursors for again our longer full length interview. So what is the number? This is I think this is a better question I have for you.
Mhm.
What is the number one lesson you have learned from studying the past, or like from studying history?
Wow. One lesson is in terms of setting up interviews, patience, because some interviews are easier to set up than others, and you deal with different personalities. Most people are more than happy to tell their stories. Other people, are not always quick to share too many things, but some things might be sensitive. depending on what their experiences might be. But mostly I haven't run into too much difficulty with it. There's another lesson I've learned is, you kind of have to, and because my uncle asked me this question all the time, how am I able to am I able to retain all this information? And to be perfectly honest with you, my honest answer to it is actually no. I mean, there are times I have to go back through some things and kind of watch videos again and kind of have to relearn different stories. 'Cause, I mean, there's so many stories on the channel. So I mean, you have to learn how to keep yourself sharp, but you also have to kind of pace yourself on memories of things. I mean, I'd like to eventually transition from, maybe at some point, I'm producing a lot of videos now, but I also like to go into doing speaking engagements and keynote speaking. In fact, I'm scheduled to do that next year at a dinner for the Afro American Historical Association of the Niagara Frontier. That'll
Okay,
be my
so lit. That
that'll
is
be
so cool.
that's going to be my first actual keynote speaking experience, which I'm certainly looking forward to. So between doing that and that way, I can kind of set myself as more of a historian and
Yeah,
a
I would
really
love for you to speak, Mr. Huffman, for Latina Herstory, if you wanted
sure.
to speak to them about, what I call identity specific content
Mhm.
and, like, what your process has been. I also have a leadership group professionally, so I if you would like to speak, sir, there are opportunities. Some
Yeah,
of them are unpaid, but I'm sure people would love
of
to hear
course.
from you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is I told you I was only gonna ask 2 questions, but I have, like, a third, which is good, but
Okay.
my second, which is, like, a content question,
Hmm.
is whose history is missing? Like, out of all the stories you've told about Black history, is there a part of the community's history that's missing? And then my last question, and I hate rushing the interview because I could literally interview for 3 hours, but my last question as we close our snippet interview, that's
Hmm.
gonna be kind of like a precursor to our full length is, like, how can someone help? Like, if they wanna get involved, like, are you taking interns? Would you take pictures? Like, is there a way that someone in the larger community who's listening to you can support you?
Wow. So whose history is missing? I can tell you exactly what's missing right now from the History Channel is the history of sports in Buffalo. And I've been trying to find, because I've had a few brothers come to me because they want to do something on. We had a thing called a player for the Buffalo Braves. Buffalo used to have an NBA basketball team for the Buffalo Braves, and one of its most famous players was Randy Smith. And Randy also had a basketball league that was very impactful in the community back in the day. And I've had a number of guys come to me wanting to do something to talk about, right, that the history and impact of that basketball league. So I definitely intend to, in the future, try to get more stories on Buffalo sports history, because that is very significant. So that's going to be something that's in the works for the near future. Far as help is always needed. Hard for me to intern. Love to have some interns. The complicated thing right now is because I'm not in Buffalo, and but I definitely would need to. It'd be good. It would be good to hook up with some people that are, aspiring to get into this type of work as well. That could be some help, and kind of cover some different areas of some things when I'm not there. Because every now and then I'll have, it won't just be past history on the Buffalo History Channel. We also have, try to make room for some current stories and current pieces as well. So I'd love to be able to work something out in the near future with trying to have some interns that could, help out, if they even if they have some ideas of some stories that would be really key in Buffalo to have on the History Channel. If they could go out there and maybe shoot some stuff, and then I can give them the information to upload it to the channel. So that actually would be a plus. It would be something to kind of keep the platform going.
Yeah, I have a million ideas, so I'm gonna condense them in an email.
Okay.
But I definitely agree. I think Buffalo athletic history is a source of great pride for us. I want to shout out Cecily Owens, who is the first.
Yes.
You know Cecily,
Yes.
okay? So
Absolutely.
her history, and I'm like, I'm trying to get an interview with her about it, but the reason being is because we celebrate National Women and Girls in Sports Day in the West Side, and that I think is really important. And that's also it overlaps with Black History Month. So I've always like tried to find information about sports history and stuff, and I definitely agree with you. I think there's a high need. So again, I want to reiterate how important I think your project is, how unique it is, and how I really think that a lot of people, especially within the Latino community, as they're learning
Yes.
about ways that the African American community is documenting like your history, but also using it as a source for inspiration and pride going forward. I think it's really cool because it really, I think, sets like how important the people are that we interviewed now. Like I interviewed Thomas O'Neill White from he's at
Hmm.
LPR. He said he was the first person of African American heritage to actually work on the news floor.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
know. I was like, "Are you
I've seen him on Facebook, so I do know who he is.
so?"
I
And
haven't met him, but I do know who he is.
well, Mr. Ruffin, what I'm saying is when I saw your content and then I had that conversation, it was easier for me to make the connection about the importance. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I do
Thank you
it.
for having me.
Oh, because I want to do a full length interview, but I'm just
Yeah,
really excited that you're
we'll do
willing
that.
to share your time with the listeners so they could learn a little bit about where to find your content. And just as we close, because I did want to try to share this out in a timely manner, I know you have some events tonight. Did you want to cover those before we close the space?
Yeah, we're continuing our Soul of Buffalo TV and Legends of Buffalo Radio series, Black Media series. Tonight, we've got a blockbuster double feature of content. At 7 p.m., we have an in-depth interview with Les Trent. He was on back in the day. He was on Channel 2. He's now on Inside Edition. He tells his story, his media story. And at 8 o'clock, we have the one and only Sandy White. Most people see her all over the community, involved in different things. But back in the day, most people don't know that she was also a prominent news reporter, not just in Buffalo, but also in California, in Los Angeles, California, on the West Coast. She helped launch BET's West Coast division. So
No
she talked.
way.
Yep, she talks. She's going to talk about that in her interview. Her interview was going to be at 8 p.m. tonight. So Les Trent at 7 p.m. Sandy White at 8 p.m. tonight. Live. They'll premiere live on the YouTube channel.
All right, yeah. Well, you'll be able to see me on Instagram. I'm definitely going to be locked in at 7 and 8 o'clock.
Okay.
You know where to find me, Mr. Ruffin. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all that you know. And you'll be able to see this if you're in the audience on YouTube and on Instagram and on Facebook. So make sure you
Absolutely.
follow Mr. Ruffin and the Buffalo History Channel. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you for having me.